Hi yogis, today I have a quick yin practice. It's just a 10-minute practice that I love to do as a chest opening or a heart opening, heart melting yin practice. So what you'll need is a bolster or some blocks or even just a rolled up blanket in exchange for the bolster. And we're going to get started in a pretty deep thoracic extension, supported fish shape. So depending on how your neck feels, how high your bolster is, you might like to take a block as a pillow here. It can sometimes feel a bit cramped or a bit vulnerable for the neck, so bringing your neck to neutral can be nice while still opening up your thoracic spine. I like to do it without the block. My shoulders are pretty open. So we're just going to bring yourself onto the bolster just underneath your scapula, and then slowly melt your heart, melt your thoracic over the bolster, and then extend your arms out long over your head. Now this is a pretty deep shape for shoulder opening. It requires some pretty open shoulders. So straight away, if that feels not safe or not good, you can stick your block beneath your head to bring your neck back to a neutral position while still maintaining this thoracic extension. And you can take your arms either out to the side or just rest them lightly on your rib cage. For the legs, we're going to keep the legs long just for the time being because it is a supported fish pose. I know it's tempting to bring your feet together, knees wide, and if you're at home, absolutely do that. It's a really similar shape, but this one will just keep the hips and legs in a neutral position. So whenever you're feeling ready and comfortable and you've got your favorite chilled out yin playlist on in the background, we're just going to settle into this shape for a couple of minutes. Now during this yin practice, I like to bring attention or mindfulness into this area around the heart. Now that could be simply physical as a counterbalance to a sedentary life. So if you spend a lot of time driving, if you spend a lot of time sitting at a desk or really doing any natural human movement, this can be a really nice way to open up across the chest, which is often tight and weak, and open up across the hips, which are also often tight and weak from those lifestyle things we do as people. So I like to consider on a physical level that I'm coming to openness and balancing and recentering my physical body. But if you like a little bit more of a reflective and introspective yoga practice, you might like to think conceptually around your heart. You may have heard teachers talk about a heart space. It's a really commonly used term, but I like to think of it just as the heart where you feel your feelings, love, joy, grief, sadness. I'm just contemplating what it means to be open-hearted. So an open heart could be a heart that welcomes love in. An open heart could be a heart that forgives. So this is a nice practice to check in how you're feeling with regards to the openness of your heart. We're just going to be here for one last breath. Now remember that the postures between each yin pose are just as important. These are transitionary. So moving with ease and slowness, bend your knees, place your feet on the floor, and then just gently roll over onto one of your sides, peeling yourself up and off the bolster, and coming into a gentle rebound posture, just lying flat on your back and feel into that echo of sensation. Now, if you're taking just this 10 minutes for yourself, a way to be mindful in this practice, which is to be present, is just to focus on physical sensation, the sound of your breath, the other sounds you might hear around you, and give your mind a break. And if your thoughts take you out of your present moment, if your thoughts take you out of the here and now, just rein them back in to what's going on right here. You can think about whatever you need to think about in about 8 minutes. Now from here, gently bend your knees to the floor, roll onto that side once again, and bring yourself all the way back up to a seat. And just take a moment in a seated position with some gentle movements. So a seated cat and cow shape, rounding through your spine, opening up through the chest, getting a bit of movement around your heart space, around your ribs, and then just start to slowly draw some circles. We're going to move into our next heart opening posture. This is quite a deep pose. So from here, bring your knees underneath your hips, take your bolster. Your bolster can be used in multiple ways. You can bring it underneath your chest for a little bit of chest support. You could bring it underneath your chest horizontally, same support, a little bit different. And you can take your bolster even underneath your hands to make this a deeper shoulder stretch. So that's where I'm going today. I really want to melt my heart down towards the floor, between the shoulders. You can bring either your chin or your forehead towards the mat and just really let your shoulders open up here. This is a really deep stretch, so we are going to be here for some time. If you need to bring your bolster underneath your chest for support instead, that is totally a great option. Try to let yourself relax fully. Let your heart melt down towards the earth. An open heart is a grateful heart. So perhaps dropping into the ocean of your mind a few thoughts, a few droplets of gratitude. We're here for one final breath. Sigh it out. Now sweetly bring yourself all the way forward onto your belly. Move your bolster out of the way unless you want to use it to take your forearms to and just rest your head. I like to come all the way down to the floor. Turn one of your temples onto your hands and just take a couple of moments of rest. Now from here, draw your hands underneath your shoulders, push yourself back up to a kneeling position just for the time being. And we're gonna get ready for our next shape, but just start out with a couple of little spinal movements. That same thing, seated cat-cow, a little bit of side to side. Relax the neck, come back into that soft energy. And then we're gonna take a hold of this bolster just in case you want it for a Sphinx pose. Elbows come beneath the shoulders, that's where you're going to start. Now I like to start with a couple of shrugs and unshrugs of the shoulders. And then somewhere between shrugged and unshrugged. So semi-relaxed, semi-engaged. Now some people like to take their block on an angle and bring the head to the block so you can do minimal work here in this shape. So whether or not you have the block, we'll be here just for another minute. An open heart is a loving heart. An open heart is a tender heart. So in this very moment, you might like to ask yourself, how can I be more loving? How can I be more tender? How can I be kinder? Get a last big breath. Let it fall out of your mouth. Now you're welcome to stay here for the next minute. Otherwise, we're going to come into a seal pose. Now, seal pose typically is done with hands wider than the mat and you're gently pressing the earth away. It's totally normal to feel a little bit of compression in your lower back. Just to minimize the pain of that, you can widen your legs, tuck your tail, and squeeze your glutes, and then just let the belly kind of soften down towards the mat. You might like to stay here in this active shape, or even prop yourself up with the bolster for an assist. And it's nice to lift the chin to continue that extension movement of your spine to keep that open shape. We're just here for another 3 breaths. And then very sweetly pack that down, whether or not you have the bolster, and just come back to that neutral spine. I like to take my hands underneath my chin, bend the knees, and just wriggle side to side, releasing the sacrum. Really nice. Draw your hands underneath, come to a tabletop position, and just move your spine through that gentle cat and cow, a little side to side, perhaps some hip circles, some shoulder circles. And we'll move into our final posture for our little heart opening sequence, taking the block underneath the bolster, or you can just simply have a rolled up blanket. It doesn't really matter too much the angle of this. Some people love it, some people don't. The block acts as like a little pillow for your head, if you will. And then moving into a chest opening stretch, so really open your arms out to a cactus shape. If your arms are floating off the floor, you can always take blankets, pillows, or blocks underneath them. But if you're quite open in the heart, open in the chest, you might be able to just land your arms lightly on the floor. So this is opening up all across your pecs. I actually prefer this without the block or the block on the lower side. And then bring your feet together, knees wide. And we'll just be here for this last couple of moments. And just for these last few moments in our reclined butterfly shape, perhaps add one more reflection, one more contemplation. And that is, what feelings come up when you think of that concept, open-hearted? What is your relationship with your heart being open or closed, tender or protective? And just acknowledging and honoring that relationship with your heart that you have right here, right now. And then setting a little intention for where you want to be. There is never any complaints for being too loving, too kind, too compassionate, too open-hearted, too grateful, too joyful. So you can always invite more love into your heart. In every single moment, ask yourself, how can I be more loving? You've got one more sweet breath. Let it all go. If this feels like a really great pose to stay in, stay here. Alternatively, bring your feet to the floor, roll off your bolster, slip your block out from underneath, and come to light. Settling into a restful shavasana. I'm going to leave you here to enjoy your shavasana. I highly recommend that if you have another 5 minutes to stay here and just listen to some music and be mindful and be present and give your mind that little break. Otherwise, thank you for joining for another little yin practice for an open heart in love and gratitude. I'll see you next time.